I am reading this morning from Exodus chapter 38, verses 21 through 31. These are the records of the tabernacle of the pact, which were drawn up at Moses' bidding, the work of the Levites under the direction of Ithamar, son of Aaron the priest. Now Bedel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, had made all that the Lord had commanded Moses. At his side was Obolab, son of Ahishama, of the tribe of Dan, carver and designer, and embroiderer in blue, purple, and crimson yards, and in fine linen. All the gold that was used for the work, in all of the work of the sanctuary, the elevation offering of gold, came to 29 talents and 730 shekels by the sanctuary weight. The silver of those in the community who were recorded came to 100 talents and 1,775 shekels by the sanctuary weight, a half shekel a head, half a shekel by the sanctuary weight for each one of those who was entered in the records from the age of 20 up, 603,550 men. The 100 talents of silver were for casting the sockets in the sanctuary, and the sockets for the curtains. 100 sockets to the 100 talents, a talent a socket. And of the 1,775 shekels, he made hooks for the post, overlay for their tops, and bands around them. The copper from the elevation offering came to 70 talents and 2,400 shekels. Of it he made the sockets for the entrance of the tent of meeting, the copper altar and its copper gratings and all the utensils of the altar, the sockets of the enclosure round about and the sockets of the gate of the enclosure, and all the pegs of the tabernacle, and all the pegs of the enclosure round about.
So again, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is a very special Sunday for us. And I think that maybe the world would be a lot better place and there would be a lot more spiritual understanding out there if there were more weekends like this one. And I'm greatly looking forward to being able to be here on a Sunday and actually sit and listen to someone else, especially the person you are about to hear, because I know that it will be insightful and informative and deeply meaningful. And so with that, it is my great pleasure and honor to present, as he described me the other night, my brother from another mother, Rabbi Sonny Schnitzer. Go get him.
Before I even begin to do what I was going to do this morning, a couple of words. I was supposed to sing with the choir today, and as you can hear, my voice those of you who know me, my voice is a bit off, and I've now got a sinus infection. I have a range of about 5 notes before I crack and start coughing. So my apologies to the members of the choir and the elder for not being able to fulfill what we had hoped to do. But that's something, unfortunately, that happens often, and being able to pivot on one foot is here in September. Let's see. 2 days before Yom Kippur, I broke a tooth and had to have an extraction or bone graft. Then I managed to get an infection, which ultimately 4 months later ended up in surgery. After I recovered from the surgery, I came down with COVID for about 2 weeks. And now that the COVID's gone, I have some kind of a neurological sinus infection. Through all of these health challenges, I have been truly, I got through it, and I'm right Yaka. We got through it because more than focus on what was going on in our bodies, we were able to focus on our blessing. And that sort of is the meta message in the piece of the liturgy, the Bible portion from the final chapters. Oh, thank you. I guess somebody's having a hard time hearing me. Is that better? Oh, of course it is. Okay, so as I was saying, so we were able to really focus on our blessings. I got to start over? You want to be here until Easter? Bottom line, we've been really ill for 6 months, but we've been able to get through it by counting our blessings. Okay. And that's really what this piece of liturgy, this piece of from the Hebrew Bible, the last chapters of the book of Exodus, was about this morning. And so I always, when I come into a church, I don't know how many members of the church have heard this before, but I like to actually do a little bit of the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, the TANAKH, the Torah, in the original. So I'm going to chant, which is how Jews hear the Torah every week, a few verses from this parsha, and then focus on one word in the parsha and draw out the blessing from it. So when we begin Torah study, oftentimes we say a quick blessing. Blessed are you, Adonai, Lord, our God, sovereign of the universe, who makes us holy with his commandments and commands us to draw ourselves to the privilege of the encounter with Torah. That's the best I can do to translate the Hebrew, which goes like this. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Hele b'kudei hamishkan, mishkan ha'edut, asher pukad al pi Moshe, avodat halviyim biad Itamar ben Aharon hakohen, uvetzalel ben Uri ben Hur lemate Yehuda asait kol asher tivah Adonai et Moshe v'ito ahaliyav ben Achisamach lemate Dan charash v'choshev v'rokem v'techelet uvargaman uv'tolat hashani uv'ashesh kol hazahav asuhu lamlacha b'chol melechet hakodesh Vayehi zahav u'netufa tesha v'esrim kikar u'shva me'ot u'shloshim v'chishak otam u'nechoshet u'ntnufa shivim kikar V'alfeim v'arba me'ot shekel v'yasva et Adonai patach ohel mo'ed v'et mizbach hanachoshet v'et hamikbar hanachoshet asher lo v'et kol klei hamizbeach v'et Adonai hechatzer saviv v'et Adonai sha'ar hachatzer v'et כל יתדות המשכן, ואת כל יתדות החצר סביב. So that's what it sounded like in the original. If you attended a synagogue or you attended, back in the time of Jesus, the temple. This is how Jesus would have encountered the text in the original Hebrew. Now, the first significant word and I apologize first of all to the members of my congregation who are here, because part of what you're going to hear this morning, they already read in my Shabbat letter. But there's more, a lot more. So anyhow, the first significant word here is pekudei. The word pekudei means accountings. And that really is not quite the translation that was read for us this morning, but it was similar. But I like the word accountings because we get a detailed account of how much gold and silver and copper were used to construct the tabernacle, the tent of meeting that was used by the Israelites while wandering for 40 years through the deserts for worship. It contained the Ark of the Covenant and a lot of other ritual objects. And so the first lesson we learn from this parsha is even a great leader like Moses has to account for what he does with public funds. No one's above, nor can anyone deal lightly with the communal treasury. A lesson for all of us who sometimes take responsibility for the monies that others give for holy purposes. But since that rabbinical period, which corresponds with the life of Jesus, Jews are taught that the lessons of the Torah don't just apply to the characters in the Torah. They apply to all of us individually, not just leaders, to each and every person. So the Torah is also teaching us from the rabbinical mindset, and again, I can't stress enough, this was the world that Jesus was in. When he goes and teaches in the temple, these are the types of discussions he is having with the other rabbis. And the Torah is teaching us that each and every person is held accountable, all right, for his or her thoughts, speech, and action. This is a fundamental notion intrinsic to all rabbinic thought. Just as the Jewish nation's ability to erect a tabernacle and keep it functioning is predicated upon maintaining appropriate communal levels of righteousness and accountability, it's a prerequisite for all of us to fulfill our life's mission. Also, this word pekudei, the first significant word in this Torah portion in the Hebrew, is written in the plural. Now, the Jewish mystics of the Kabbalah get a hold of this, and they say, well, this hints then of a deeper message, because it wouldn't have said accountings, it would have just said accounting. Why is it plural? And they teach that every person is subject to two different levels of accounting. There's one type of accounting for what we've done wrong, and another type of accounting for what we've done right, but we did it in a perfunctory or unenthusiastic manner. And our rabbis taught, too, that we are judged for both the things that we did and for the things we could have done, but kind of didn't get around to. So, and then we can take it one level further. In the mystic wisdom tradition of the rabbis, each person enters this world charged with performing a specific task, a rectification. And even if you do everything right and can account for this, the primary accounting that will come to you on the day of judgment is whether the specific purpose for which your soul was brought into the world, was it carried out? Which raises the question I put to you this morning: what will we be called to account for? Well, the Talmud teaches that a person will be called to account on Judgment Day for every fruit he could have eaten and didn't. In other words, every permissible thing you might have enjoyed but did not. And it makes me smile to imagine God looking over your life at the end of your days, standing at however you conceive judgment, and saying to you, seriously? I gave you the gift of a body and a spirit, and you could have had a great time in this beautiful world, and you didn't?
You had opportunities to experience pleasure and satisfaction and delight, and you didn't take them because what? You were too busy? You were afraid? You heard somewhere that I wanted you to deny yourself everything good? Everything good that I created? What the heck were you thinking? Now, this is a warm and reassuring antidote to me to the theology of suffering. It's a reminder that even though there is turmoil and suffering in the world, it's right that we should seek out personal pleasure despite that. The theology basically says, folks, have a good time. Have a good time whenever you can. It doesn't say the world is paradise or that life isn't hard. It just says, as articulated best, I think, at the end of Ecclesiastes, if you can find some way to enjoy the fruits of your labor and the fruits of this world, do it. I also love the fact that it says in the Talmud, he should partake of every permissible thing, which does indeed imply that we're not talking about wild, reckless abandon here. We're not talking about going to Vegas and blowing your life savings or getting blackout drunk or eating donuts until you're disgusted with yourself. That's not what we're talking about. Just healthy, simple pleasure. Holy pleasure. And after every pleasure, you have one task. Count it as a blessing. Say thank you. There's a tradition, again, that Jews are supposed to say 100 blessings every day. 100 times a day, you're supposed to pause and say thank you for this. Thank you for that. Thank you for this moment. Truly. But it sounds overwhelming, and most people don't do it. We don't stop 100 times a day and say thank you, right? We're busy off to the next thing. But if we do work at it, we cultivate this attitude of gratitude. A story. There was once a young, recently minted officer of the law. Proud as you can imagine, blue uniform, gold thread, uplets on the shoulders, very full of himself. And one day he's walking his beat, and he hears a commotion in an alley. And he goes into the dark alley, and there in the distance he sees a man dressed in rags. The young officer says, "Come forward. I want to talk to you right now. I command you, in the name of the law, come forward." But the man in rags doesn't move. But from the darkness he speaks, and he says, "What am I going to do with you? What in the world am I going to do with you?" Of course, the young officer goes, "Do with me? You don't do with me. I do with you. I'm the officer of the law. I command you to come forward." And then the man in rags says, "Wait a minute. Now I know what to do with you." And as he spoke, he drew out his sword. He moves to attack the officer. And in defense, the officer of the law draws his own sword. And they're fighting, they're fencing, they're parrying, they're thrusting. And he yells, "Stop, I command you, stop!" But to no avail. The sword fight continues, and the officer of the law is overmatched, and he begins to retreat. And when it seemed like the man in rags would win, he lowered his guard. And what the officer of the law intended as a simple parry, he ends up thrusting through the man in rags. Seeing what he's done in shock and horror, he says, "Why didn't you stop when I ordered you to? Why did you attack me?" And the man in rags just waved his words away and says, "I am leaving you. And as I do, I'm putting on you a curse, the curse of blessings. Every day you must say a new blessing, a blessing you've never said before. On the day when you don't say a new blessing, that's the day you will die." And with these words, the man in rags closed his eyes and vanished. And the young officer says to himself, "This is the weirdest dream. I must be dreaming. Only a dream could be this weird." So the officer continues his day and his rounds until the late afternoon, and as the sun set, as much as he tried to ignore his experience earlier that morning, he couldn't forget what happened to him. And his bones began to grow cold, and he knew from the chill in his bones that indeed his life was leaving him. And in a panic he said, "Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who has created this beautiful sunset And immediately the warmth and life flows back into him. He realizes with both shock and relief that the curse had been real. So the next day, after he gets up, he doesn't delay at all. He says, "Blessed are you who allowed me to wake up this morning." And he felt secure the entire day. Next morning, he blessed his ability to rise from his bed. The next day, he blessed that he could tie his shoes. Day after day, he found abilities that he could bless, that he could go to the bathroom, that he had teeth to brush, that each finger of his hand, and he did each finger every day, still worked, that he had toes on his feet, that he had hair on his head. He began to bless his clothes, every single garment. He blessed his house. He blessed the roof. He blessed the floor. He blessed the furniture. He blessed every table, every chair, every single day a new blessing. And when he ran out of things to bless, he began to go out into the town and bless the things of other people. And then he began to bless the relationships he had with these other people. And people really appreciated the blessings. He went out and he blessed the mailman. He blessed his fellow officers in the police department. He blessed the mayor. He blessed the beggars. He blessed the street sweepers. He blessed the merchants in their shops. He blessed their merchandise. And his words of blessing seemed to have power, and they drew his family and friends and the community closer together around him. Decades passed, and eventually he has to go further afield to find new blessings to give every day so he can stay alive. He blessed city councils. He blesses university buildings, scientists and their discoveries. And as he travels through the world, he becomes in awe of its balance and its beauty. And then he blessed that. And his life was long. And he had the opportunity to learn in every field of endeavor. He passed the age of 100. Most of his friends were long gone. His time was relegated to searching for purpose in his life and searching for the one from whom all blessing flows. He had long since realized he wasn't the source of the blessing. He was only the conduit. And even that realization was welcomed with a blessing that sustained him for another day. He passed the age of 120, and he considered that his life was long enough. Even Moses had not lived longer. And on his birthday, he makes a conscious decision not to utter a new blessing. But he spent the day reciting old blessings, and throughout the day he reviewed all that he had blessed in his life, the blessings for his body, his possessions, the relationships that had spread throughout the world, for the awesome beauty and balance of creation, and for the very deep resonance, the pulse of purpose that pervaded his very being. But no new blessing passed his lips. And as the sun was setting, a chill progressed from the core of his body outward, and he didn't resist it. In the twilight, a figure appeared before him. It was the man in rags. "You," the officer exclaimed, "I've thought about you every day for 100 years. I never meant to harm you. Please forgive me." "Forgive you?" said the man in rags. "You don't understand still, do you? You don't know who I am, do you? I'm the angel of death. I was sent 100 years ago to harvest your soul. But when I looked at you so pompous and proud, there was no soul to harvest. An empty uniform is all that I saw. So I put upon you the curse of blessings, and look what you've become." And the officer grasped in an instant what had happened, everything that had happened, and why. And overwhelmed, he said, "Blessed are you, God, ruler of the universe. You kept me alive and sustained me so that I could attain this moment." The man in rags looks at him and says, "Now what you done? I'll come back tomorrow." Thank you for allowing me to be your teacher this day.